Good evening to you both, and let's begin with the Premier setting the tone for Alberta's approach to dealing with the new Liberal Prime Minister.
Whether or not he, as a leader, is going to be able to change course remains to be seen. He's given some undertakings, but he said different things in different forms to different people in different parts of the country.
Danielle Smith says she'll spend the coming days discussing Alberta's future, a future she hopes remains within a united Canada. Premier also adds Albertans can put any issue on the table for a possible referendum. A special UCP caucus meeting will be held Friday to discuss Alberta's next move. Sarah, in response to the issue of Western alienation in the past, the previous Trudeau government sent Chrystia Freeland out to navigate a road forward. How much attention do you expect the new Carney government to pay to Premier Smith's pledge to get respect?
I think that the Carney government is going to be very diplomatic, or at least that's my hope. But I see his approach as Prime Minister, and I think we've already seen it in the short time he was Prime Minister in between when he won the leadership of the federal Liberals and the federal election call. My goodness, so much has happened in such a short period of time. But I think you know his attitude is one of professionalism and diplomacy. I think what the question that I have is that because Premier Smith came in, I would say, rather hot yesterday with her comments, even the way that she couched her congratulations to the Carney government for a minority. I'm wondering if there can be a de-escalation so that Albertans can benefit from this, new relationship. But it's going to take two people, and they both have to do the work.
Barry, on that point of de-escalation, is this something the new Carney government needs to pay attention to? Where do you see Alberta discontent ranking on the list of national priorities?
Well, I think Sarah said it well. I think Mr. Carney has a pretty good view of the country, and he is a diplomat. He's navigated through some very tricky situations in the past, and I think the biggest question about this is who's willing to build the relationship. And right now, with Premier Smith's kind of attitude about it, I'm a little concerned that Alberta will be left out for the partisan politics of it, kind of the negative approach that she seems to be taking to the opportunity that's in front of us. I think for now, everybody should be taking the federal government in its entirety at its word that they want to protect Canada. They want to build a better economic opportunity for us. We should all be laying down our arms, coming into the room and doing what's best for the country.
Sarah, a special UCP caucus meeting to be held Friday to talk behind closed doors about Alberta's next move. What do you think weighs on that discussion?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm hoping, Michael, and obviously we won't know what happens behind those closed doors, but I'm hoping that there are some voices in the room who say, you know what, wait a second here. We need to think about what's best for Alberta within Canada, as well as Canada as a country at this time, negotiating or renegotiating yet another trade deal with President Trump. So how can we best advocate for Alberta's interests? And that might be, so I'm hoping that there are some people who will say, you know what, we just need to cool it down a little bit and, let's see how this discussion goes rather than, again, coming in really hot because you can tell that Premier Danielle Smith obviously didn't get the outcome that she wanted. She was rooting for openly Pierre Poilievre to win, and he hasn't. He actually lost his seat. So despite Alberta staying pretty blue, we have to work within Confederation.
Barry, the Premier has again referenced the ability of Albertans to put any issue on the table for a possible referendum. Is that just to pile pressure on the new Carney government, or is it that the Smith government really does want a referendum on sovereignty?
Well, I think Premier Smith wants a bunch of things that distract from some of the other issues she has that are climbing up the ladder on her. I think the whole inquiry into medical contracts, I think the state of healthcare generally, the public service, all of these things, the deficit that's ballooning as we speak because of oil prices, I think all of those things, she's trying to set up her summer so that she can talk about things that aren't directly related to what she has or hasn't done in the past. And I think the referendum, the idea of the lowering the threshold, those are all red herrings for her to just get through the summer And I don't think it makes any difference, and it shouldn't make any difference to the federal government about that at all. I don't think there's broad support for a referendum, and I don't think it's going to make a difference to the way they come to the table.
Okay, well, and on that point of referendum, the Smith government is moving to simplify that process. It's one of several changes in amendments to 7 pieces of legislation, including the Elections Act.
These proposed changes are intended to give Albertans confidence that our democratic processes are fair, consistent, and transparent for all.
Among the changes, banning of electronic tabulators, a 12-hour deadline on unofficial results, bringing back corporate and union political donations, and making it easier to recall MLAs. Now, the threshold for a referendum also will go from 10% of all registered voters to 10% of those who voted in the last provincial election. Barry, something like 50 proposed changes to election rules, government acts. How necessary are they? What stands out for you?
Well, I think bringing big money back into politics is just detrimental, generally speaking. I don't think he talks about democracy being served. Democracy is only being served in that instance of people who have big dollars. There was no talk about disclosure, when that disclosure is going to happen and how it's going to happen. I think that's far more important than spending limits and who gets to donate, to be honest. If we don't know until well after an election that who's been giving the money to who, not very transparent at all. And then I think, again, this idea that the recall and how that works, I don't think they've addressed the core issue that Albertans want, which is accountability in between elections that isn't based on an 18-month or 24-month disruptive in a term. I just don't think, again, that this serves democracy. It serves the UCP very well in their election, re-election, whatever you want to call it, going forward, because this is where they find success.
Sarah, the Premier says her government wants to make it easier for Albertans to express their political views. Where do you feel these changes leave democratic processes?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack, touching 7 pieces of legislation. This is a lot of change. And unfortunately, because I know what my home life is like, there is a lot of this is going to get lost in the details, and most people won't be able to fully give their attention to this, which is unfortunate. I do want to touch on the fact that they seem to be kind of positioning this, Mickey Amory and Danielle Smith, as, fair and transparent. And, the Premier actually said, quote, "I believe democracy thrives when people trust the process." I would like to ask Premier Danielle Smith what she has done to enable people to trust the process, because honestly, I think that she's taking it the other way, creating distrust in our electoral systems with some of these changes, as well as just specifically the removal of electronic vote tabulators. That is rooted in conspiracy theories, people mistrusting the vote. I know that there were people, I had a friend texted me on election day. She said that she was in line. There was a guy giving the elections worker, albeit federal, not provincial, a hard time because she wanted to take his ballot back to tear off the little perforated piece of the ballot before he put it in the ballot box. He got upset at her. What are our elected officials doing to build up confidence? These changes don't do that.
We heard from Heather McPherson off the top tonight on being the lone NDP candidate elected or re-elected in Alberta. Sarah, with just 7 MPs now in the NDP caucus, official party status stripped away, the loss of Jagmeet Singh as leader, what kind of weight do you now see weighing on Heather McPherson's shoulders? What is she up against?
I mean, I think she's obviously a very polished politician, and, I enjoyed hearing her comments. I definitely think there is the capacity for her to take on an interim leadership role if she's not interested in running for the leadership herself. As to the question of will the NDP, will Canada, the House of Commons miss Jagmeet Singh? And my short answer is no. He didn't bring much to the table. Despite, the supply and confidence agreement, yes, they were able to push some policy items, but who got credit for all of those things during the federal election? It was the federal Liberals. So, Jagmeet Singh really fell on his sword in some ways by his own design, I'll add. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But you know what they can do? They can negotiate to get official party status as part of their agreement if they want to play politics with the federal Liberals. So we'll see.
There is certainly some discussion of that. So, Barry, how do you see this depleted caucus navigating, even negotiating a relationship with the new Carney government? How much of a voice will it end up having?
Well, I think in the short term, it's going to be pretty muted because, as you know, Mr. Blanchette has come out and said that he's going to make sure that the government stays in place for at least a year, albeit he said as long as they don't try to run a pipeline through Quebec, and well, that remains to be seen how all that works out. But so I think the NDP are in a bit of trouble in the short term, but also that gives them the opportunity to kind of reset themselves and decide what they want to be going forward and how they want to be presenting themselves at the next election. I think Sarah's right. I think Jagmeet Singh, his leadership was not, for the time, it wasn't reflective of what Canadians were looking for. And, that goes back even to the previous election. So the NDP's got a bit of a chance to breathe here, set themselves up, have a really hard look at what they want to look like in the next election. And they should take that time because I don't think they're going to be very relevant in the short term with the current government.
Sarah, what do you make of rumors of defections to help push the Liberals into majority territory? Are those the kinds of discussions that could actually be happening in the background?
I mean, it's possible, but I wouldn't put it past conservative strategists pushing that kind of in the ear of different people that kind of sows discord. If you've ever met a New Democrat, for the most part, they are hardcore New Democrats. They really believe in their party values. They really celebrate what it means to be a New Democrat. It could happen. But I don't foresee that happening at all.
Barry, what do you see coming of the process to replace Jagmeet Singh? What will that say about the future of the party?
Well, again, I think in this time period between now and when they select a permanent leader, it is going to define what the NDP, how they're going to go into the next election, how they're going to present themselves to Canadians. I think they're going to have a lot of difficulty finding a leader that, with the exception of some of the people in their caucus right now, who can present well across the board to Canadians. Sarah said it, the NDP certainly federally tend to be pretty hardcore, tend to be pretty ideological. But it is interesting to note that in the provincial legislations, that the NDP seems to be a little bit more centrist, even in places like BC. They tend to move across that center ground a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see because they've been successful at the provincial level, and maybe that's something they need to look at go forward to see what that might look like on a federal basis. Okay,
so Sarah, maybe in that kind of vein, how likely is the federal NDP leadership race to maybe mirror the Alberta NDP version that resulted in the arrival of an outsider?
Well, I think it's very likely that there's going to be outside interest in the leadership of the federal NDP. But, even if there is, I think that there is a huge difference between the federal NDP and, to Barry's point, which is very valid, and the provincial NDP. You can see federal NDP. There's never been a federal NDP government, whereas there are. You can look at Manitoba, a very popular party leader, Wab Kinew, the premier of Manitoba, is doing really well. So if the federal NDP was to take a page from a provincial party in terms of, its platform and policies, but honestly, leadership contests are really good at sometimes bringing out the best of a political party and at the same time the worst. And depending on what kind of issues get raised and the campaigns that people run, it can either bring people together or it can really push them apart. I would like to say that this would be a great opportunity for Naheed Nenshi to announce that now is the right time for the provincial Alberta NDP to part ways from the federal party.
And that may well be a point that comes up this weekend when the provincial party holds its convention. All right, we're out of time. We have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly.
Thanks.
Thank you.